Right.
Okay, to the Lord. Father God, we come before thee. We present this meeting to you, Lord, for there is no other way that we can go on and get this meeting started. And for you, O Lord, to lay it before us to do the right thing, to present the panelists, O Lord, and to know oh, that they're sharing this news with the community for those, oh Lord, who want to hear. We thank Susie for inviting me and including me. We thank all of the panelists, all that agreed to be a part, all of them. And we ask, O Lord, that the host be guided by you, not by himself. We ask, O Lord, that you consider us, that you guide us, oh, that you anoint us, that it's done for your glory and your honor in the precious and mighty name of your darling Son, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
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 All righty. It is truly my pleasure to introduce our moderator for tonight, Pastor Kirk Lyons Sr. He is the senior minister at Rogers Community United Methodist Church. He is not only the pastor there, but he is a community activist. He is constantly out in the community. He brings a wealth of experience to this community, and we do thank him and the United Methodist Church for placing him here for me to have an opportunity to meet such a fine gentleman who cares not only about souls, but people's lives as well. He attended the New York Theological Seminary, where he earned a Master of Divinity degree and graduating with honors. He attended Princeton Theological Seminary and Union Theological Seminary at New York City, pursuing a PhD studies in New Testament. He is a former theological consultant for Faith and Values Media, where he was an integral part of the creative team producing their flagship program, America at Worship. He has been interviewed on numerous television and radio shows. He has been an adjunct professor in the Biblical Studies Department of New York Theological Seminary, teaching courses in New Testament and biblical exegesis. Since 2008, Pastor Lyons has supplemented his work as a pastor by serving as the founder and senior servant leader of Brothers Keepers, an all-male ministry. Since then, Brothers Keepers has established chapters in Jamaica and is scheduled to launch a chapter in Ghana in 2024, and that might have happened, Pastor Lyons. So I introduce to some and present to others, Pastor Kirk Lyons Sr. The floor is yours, Pastor.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Susie. And of course, many thanks to the Manatee County Democratic Black Caucus that has been continuing to do such great work in this area. And I'm just overjoyed to be a part of what you're doing. Tonight, we have a distinguished panel that is going to be guiding our conversation tonight. We have Professor Frank Alcock. We have attorney C.J. Zaya. We have journalist and author Julian Phillips. And we have a reporter, podcaster, Ed James III. I'm going to ask as we open that each of our panelists would just give a 2-minute brief bio so that all of those that are in on this meeting can kind of have some sort of background of who they are, what they've done in terms of giving some sort of orientation. We're going to begin with Professor Frank Alcock.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Well, welcome, and well, thank you for having me. Professor Frank Alcock, a professor of political science and environmental studies, New College of Florida, finishing up my 23rd year, in addition to currently directing the environmental studies program. Been there quite some time. Work with a lot of community organizations, starting with Moat, ABC News. I've done a lot of work with the Collins Center for Public Policy, which went defunct at the end of 2012. But part of what I was doing in the follow-up to the Fair District Amendments that were passed, changes to our state constitution in 2010, got involved with just trying to interpret what our state Supreme Court was doing, and that bled into some Voting Rights Act stuff at that time. Had a number of hats, ran for office way back in 2016, and have worked with the community, I think, on a lot of different topics. I see myself less of a sort of researcher, knowledge producer, more of as a knowledge broker. And so when I get called upon to try to explain, well, sort of the state of affairs or what the conventional understandings are on a particular topic, happy to contribute as best as I can. So,
thank you so much, Professor. Next, we're going to have Attorney C.J. Zaya.
First, it's an honor to be back with you all and to be present today. It's a very important topic for our democracy and our Constitution and where we're going. I've had the privilege of being born overseas and raised all over the world. I even lived 4 years in Ghana in Africa and South Africa during apartheid and all over the world, actually. Ended up settling in the Tampa Bay area in Manatee County, Palmetto specifically. I practiced in this area since '92 or close to that. Started as a public defender, and then I did a lot of criminal work. I always say my passion is crime, to make sure that we keep democracy flowing and correct. You know, I love this idea that the state has to prove you guilty beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. I think that's very unique to our country. And overall was very happy and proud of my judicial system, the system we have here. I'm changing my opinion, unfortunately, with the Supreme Court, but that's another issue we can talk about. But crime doesn't pay for lawyers either, so I make my money by doing personal injury. But my passion is criminal. I've been chairman of the Democratic Party in Manatee County back when Barack won. I worked with Biden specifically and Luis Navarro, who was the executive director of the Democratic Party of Florida, that got me connected and all that, and helped and I'm a big advocate for immigration reform. I'm a big pro-immigration person and a justice person, and I've seen a great deal of abuse. And actually, it's almost, I almost feel like crying of where we're heading. But I have been in the area for a long time, run for office, and try to be a good a citizen. Even though the numbers were always against what we did politically, we still participate and try to improve the community. I just want to leave with saying that it's an honor to be here. And every time we move forward in life in our country, it seems that then we step back. But the idea is that we continue to move forward in a positive direction. So it's an honor to be here with you. Thank you, Susie. Thank you to everyone. Without your encouragement and your vision and your hard work, I know we can change this around for the better country that we all desire.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing your views during our panel discussion. Next up, we have journalist, author, who is also a personal friend and brother of mine and a fellow transplant from New York, Mr. Julian Phillips.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lyons, and it's an honor to be here, even to be thought of at this point in time of my career, because I'm retired, and gleefully so. But I am a journalist first and foremost, 3-time Emmy Award winner, 10-time nominee, working most of my career in New York. I was summoned to be in the lion's den, I guess, by God, by being the first African-American anchor on Fox News Channel. I was the co-host. Well, there's a good reason for it. That's the first thing people say. But I was the first one there, and I was the co-host of Fox and Friends for 4 years. I was penned to be the liberal punching bag, but in 4 years there, I never lost a fight. And as a result of that, I was taken off the air, and it took me 15 years to get back on because I was blackballed. So I paid the price, but it was a good one. As far as I'm concerned, they had a voice there that they never had on Fox before. So I figured God placed me there for that purpose. So it was all worth it. I'm also an author. I authored 2 Christian books, one with the Reverend Dr. A.R. Bernard. I'm also a political analyst who worked on Capitol Hill with Congressman Ed Towns, the Government Oversight and Reform Committee, for about 2 years. I retired from broadcasting after working for Arise News as the first African American chief spokesperson for the NYPD. I was in charge of the welfare of 55,000 officers and civilians, and that was quite a task. And I'm certainly glad that's over. Outside of that, Dr. Lyons also knows me as a celebrity chef. I've traveled around the world. I've developed spices. My wife and I, who's a Grammy-nominated jazz vocalist, and she's taking off big down here in Sarasota. We had a great restaurant in Hell's Kitchen in New York, and created a fusion down there. And hopefully I can do some more cooking. Outside of that, I get called regularly from Washington and New York on political issues, which I try to stay away from these days, but I keep getting drawn in. I was asked to be a part of a couple of congressional campaigns in New York, which I turned down. But now I get called again by Dr. Lyons, and when he calls, I really can't refuse him. So I'm here, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Brother Phillips. And rounding out our panel this evening is reporter podcaster Ed James III.
Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank Dr. Lyons, Mrs. Susie Copeland, and the Manatee County Democratic Black Caucus for affording me this opportunity. My name is Ed James III. I am somewhat of an alien because I'm a 5th-generation Sarasotan. So, many of us don't exist, and oftentimes people think that it's fictional, but we do exist. And I'm a product of Sarasota County Public School System, graduate of the University of Chicago, where I worked under the tutelage of Dr. Kathy J. Cohen, working on her book Democracy Remixed. After graduating from University of Chicago, I worked on the President Barack Obama's reelection campaign in 2012 as a regional field director. I then moved to the West Coast. I worked for a little tech company called Google for 4.5 years. Then I came back to Florida. I got my master's in applied American politics and policy from Florida State University. While at Florida State, my master's thesis ended up becoming a chapter in a book called Races, Reform, and Policy, exploring the 2014 midterms, where I wrote a chapter on Congressional District 2 at the time in Florida, which was Gwen Graham's seat. She was one of the only Southern Democrats at that time to upset a Republican in the midterm. So we explored that. I currently work as a writer and reporter for Sarasota's community radio station, WSLR, and I am the new host of Notes from the Field, which is a podcast. It's available on Apple as well as Spotify. So I'm delighted to be here. This is a timely topic, and I'm just grateful to be able to chip in the little bit of knowledge that I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother James, and thank all of the panelists for giving us an orientation of who you are and what you've done. We're going to jump right into the panel discussion. I know that the flyer has a tag that follows each person's name, but one of the things I want to do tonight is I want to have a free-flowing conversation around this issue. And so that any of the panelists can just jump in. I want to ask once again, now that most of the people are on the line, that you please mute your phones when you're not talking so that there's no background noise and everyone can hear everyone's contribution to the discussion. Recently, the Supreme Court announced its decision in Louisiana versus Calais. It struck down the state's congressional map as an unconstitutional racial gerrymander, and in doing so, it obliterated the commitment of the Voting Rights Act to racial equality in elections. It is considered by many as a singularly horrendous decision, which misunderstands what the Constitution requires in this context and directly contradicts the text and purpose of the Voting Rights Act. I want to open up the floor to the panelists to comment on that.
Well, if I can start,
Sure.
from a perspective I mean, it's clear what they're doing, right? But I've always asked, when is it that when is the freedom train arrived? I guess the best way of putting it. When I was at the inauguration of Barack Obama, everybody was weeping. I remember all the millions of people. It wasn't a Photoshop moment. It was legit, of all races. And the people there seemed to be feeling that those struggles of so many years, from the Civil War and pre to today, that all the advances we had finally achieved, a better nation, or a racially, correct way that we can all look at each other more as human beings rather than differences. And I really believed that that freedom train had arrived. And then, lo and behold, what happened after Barack? And you realize it hasn't. But the question to me is, when is it that we can stop? I mean, will we ever be able to stop looking at color or differences or religion? As a Democratic insider, more recently than not, if you were in the Democratic primary for Congress in Sarasota and Bradenton area, you felt if you had a Jewish candidate against you, you weren't going to win if you weren't Jewish. If you were in a black district, I ran once for state senate, the House rather, and it was, well, both actually, but it was mostly a predominantly black district in Manatee. I won African American votes. I did it in St. Pete. The point is, when is it that I have to vote for? I'm concerned more about the race or religion of the individual rather than our shared values of what we want to change. So clearly, we still need it. That's what I'm evaluating, and the unfortunate thing. But my hope and my prayer was that one day we don't have to look at the differences that we have as skin color, religion, etc., and enjoy that we are all on the ship together. You know what I'm trying to say? So for me, it was sort of trying to figure out, okay, is the Supreme Court wholly racist? I mean, one of the top guys is an African American, right? Or what are they trying to do? Have we advanced so much as a humankind, as people, or are we still not there? And I hate to say, I think we still need the justice or the system to ensure that we all have a place at the table. Anyway, I just thought it's not just that it's a, are we there yet, or are we not there? And I think that's also part of the topic, in my opinion.
Mr. Zaya, you actually brought up an excellent point, and I think it gives context to what we're witnessing right now when you mentioned the election of Barack Obama. In my opinion, I think a lot of what we're seeing is actually a response to his presidency. This is a complete and whole backlash to his presidency. It was very clear that there were instruments and institutions that were setting themselves in place to make him a one-time president, and then after he was reelected, to undo all that he did for the nation. What was exposed during that time, I remember the euphoria around his election initially, and there was even talk about the United States being in a post-racial era, which was really premature and wrong. We get it now. But what it did was it actually exposed the underbelly and the undercurrent of racism that was still there. And it really just brought it to the surface. And we have been living through and witnessing the ugliness of racism and how it has permeated throughout a lot of the systems in our nation.
Dr. Lyons, if I can say, and then I'll be quiet because we have so many panelists and professors with knowledge. I believe that this nation was founded on a racist agenda. you had to be a very rich white man to win. I think in the Constitution it says him, his, 55 times, never mentions her. So women didn't have a right to vote. They weren't part of the thing. Black men weren't even considered full human. It's written, and Native Americans not even a human being. I think it was very clear our nation was founded that we the people wasn't we the people. It was rich white men, landowners in particular. And I don't think much has changed. We still haven't had a female president. You saw what happened to our last Democratic candidate. I think a lot of it is still based that the Trump wins, even when he doesn't have a majority against Hillary Clinton. And by 3 million popular votes, he loses because the system is designed to keep certain people down. And nothing can change until we revolutionize our democracy.
I agree
Yeah,
wholeheartedly.
if I might just kind of come in on that point about even when he loses, he wins. I mean, we need look no further than the school board in Sarasota County, um, where Karen Rose was defeated. Was defeated. So the voters spoke up and said, "We don't want Karen Rose on our school board." And yet, when the Tim Enos resigns, who's the person that's appointed? It's Karen Rose. So we've been seeing this backroom wheeling and dealing go on for a long time. And, we don't have to look to Washington, D.C. We can look right here in Sarasota, Manatee counties. In addition to that, if we think about 2024, there was an amendment on the ballot, Amendment 1. And that was begging the question of whether or not school board races should be considered partisan or not. Florida voters spoke up and they rejected that. So they said, you know what? No, we need to keep these races nonpartisan. Well, in 2026, what are we seeing at the school board level and then also at the municipal level? We are seeing dark money influence these races at levels we've never seen before. In St. Petersburg, for instance, Ken Welch said himself that he had never had to raise more than $90,000 to win a re-election, and now that race alone has already surpassed 5 million plus. So what we're seeing is voters speaking, but Trump and his cronies and DeSantis and his cronies using tools going through the back door, not the front door, to do whatever they want. And that gets us to our topic today of the gerrymandering.
And you said something, and it reminded me of a conversation I had 2 weeks ago with my oldest son, and he was saying, "Dad, a lot of young people, you'd be surprised how many of them really don't understand um, how the legislative process works. They don't understand the structure at all." He said you would be surprised at the wholesale ignorance that exists. And I was appalled at it, just remembering, from elementary school when we learned about these things, how bills go forward, how they eventually pass and become law. These things were an integral part of our education, and to hear that we have a generation that really don't know how it works. You have that, and then you have the wholesale apathy that I've noticed. And no offense, but I've never seen it as prevalent as I've seen it here in Florida, the apathy around voting. And I spend a considerable amount of time on the streets, talking to people, praying for people, ministering to them, and having these critical conversations around these issues. And then when the conversation turns to, well, do you vote? There's silence. And
You need critical thinking to vote, Reverend. You need critical thinking people in Latin America, where I've been and seen elections where people can't read and write and they're voting. I go, how can, and they're selling their votes because they don't think. We're not taught to think anymore. We're not taught to critically think. We're not taught to ask questions. We're not taught to come to a point on our own merit, from what we learn. It's designed. The public education is being blown up. I mean, we could go on and on, but I think this has been something since Nixon, a ploy so that people of real wealth and power can control and make more money. And and until we, the people, get involved, nothing will change.
Professor Alcock,
Yes.
I'd love to hear your views and impressions on incoming students and their orientation and understanding of the process or not, their readiness for the classes that you teach.
Well, thank you for the question. I'm seeing a lot, but it's a complicated story in part because I think most of you are probably aware of the makeover that's been happening at New College. Before addressing the students, again, just circling back to what we're seeing, if I had to throw a word out, it really meets the definition of a fascist playbook. It's been developing for a while, very strong strains of racist ideology as well as misogyny, and I would label it a virulent strain of distorted Christianity, Christian nationalism. They're coming together. We can go back to the Voting Rights Act at some point, but I think the Louisiana versus Calais decision is a devastating blow, but it's not singular in that there's been a few blows under the Roberts Court that have led up to what's happening right now, and how they've added up together is and reinforced one another is pretty important. The incoming students, I think some of the trends, the generations that have lived on social media, I think are less aware of just basic factual knowledge content on civics, history. Attention spans are narrower, and most recently, the introduction and just widespread use of artificial intelligence and generative AI that some of the incoming students now, it's been available since 2023, are becoming increasingly reliant on that. And so there is a change nationwide. At New College, the dramatic overhaul, first of the administration and board, a lot of turnover on the faculty, and then simply displacing or replacing a lot of the community. And so you had a lot of students that left immediately, and have been replaced by, we started athletic programs, and a lot of the students that are coming in, transfer students looking for playing time. So we've been relying on athletes for a couple of years now in our incoming cohorts. A lot of them homeschooled, more right-wing conservative families, Christian backgrounds. It's a bit like a box of chocolates. You don't want to judge anybody. There's been some wonderful new additions, and I don't mind. In fact, I appreciate some of the diversity. I certainly have more demographically diverse classes than I've had in the past, but I think some of the norms that I have long believed in, just in terms of the country that we live in and the democratic principles, a liberal democracy, the rights that we have, and what it means, and the integrity, preserving the integrity of the system or parts of the system. We've kind of fought for a long time to make it work, and the Voting Rights Act is central to that. It seems to be displaced by consolidation of power by any means necessary, and that includes the violation of democratic principles, norms, pushing the boundaries, trying to destroy a number of the guardrails. Pushback among sort of the newer students is a little tepid, I think, and that might be partly due to the different demographics at New College at the moment. But I did come across something that was rather interesting within the past couple of weeks. Just public opinion. We have this notion of Gen Z that we've taught, thrown around, and that would equate to voters in the ages of 18 to 29, that's actually bifurcated. And if you look at 23 to 29, a lot of those that sort of swung over into Trump support, temporary Trump support, are swinging back and are very unhappy. Less so with that 18 to 22, 23 group. There's something distinctively different. And it's not, MAGA per se, but it's almost this anything goes, win, control, exercise power, shrug it off, be willing to just sort of laugh off things that are just, don't have historical precedent in my lifetime in terms of very important things about how this country works that are being cast aside. And there's somewhat of a shrug in that the younger generation, that 18 to 22, 23, that is not completely reflective of the later 20s and into the 30s. And so I'm struggling to make sense of it all. That's just an initial cut at it.
I want to just shift just a little bit, and I want to hear from Julie and Ed regarding media. I cannot remember a time during my lifetime when mainstream media has been as polarized as it is now, as obviously polarized as it is now. But also, I'm noticing a lot of people, and this is not just young people, a lot of people are no longer actually reading newspapers, getting their news from traditional sources, but now social media has filled a gap and a void. It has emerged as a new idiom for people to receive their news. So I want to talk about how the media plays into this in terms of people understanding what's going on, how it comes to them, and even possibly information about what happens before the news is disseminated, the decisions that are made, and who makes those decisions behind the cameras. Let us into that world, Julian and Ed, and kind of tell us how that process works. That determines what we actually get coming into our homes through the television.
Ed, you want to start off? You're muted, Ed. Ed, you're muted.
I apologize. I was saying that you could start off since you haven't spoken yet.
Oh, that doesn't make any difference. The first will be last, the last will be first. It doesn't matter. Well, look, to me, it's quite simple. The media has changed and transformed itself even before when President Clinton deregulated the FCC. You have major networks now that are owned by corporations. ABC is owned by Disney. NBC is owned by Universal. CBS is owned by Paramount. You go down the list. So therefore, you have the fourth estate, as it were. We're supposed to be the watchdogs of government. The journalists are basically and stations are owned by the companies who pay the bills. And so therefore, you have every network, whether they be on the left or the right, that have an agenda. Of course, at Fox News, when I was there, and Roger Ailes, ruled the roost there. Of course, Rupert Murdoch being the main person, the Australian national. There was an agenda. There is an agenda. When I was there, it was more of a conservative thing. Now it's just off the rails. It's a right-wing thing. But what's happening now is you have a trillion voices out there, and people have a lot of ways of getting their information. And when you have that many voices out there, the question becomes, who or whom do you believe? That's a tough thing. So now outside of CBS, ABC, and NBC, you have Substack, you have the Midas Touch, you've got all sorts of people that are screaming in your ear. But not many people are really focusing on delivering facts as opposed to opinions. And that's the thing. We are in a situation right now that could largely have been unavoided if we had great messaging, and we don't. And for instance, this whole thing with the Voting Rights Act. Have you seen any network that has given a history of the Voting Rights Act? Have you seen any network that really explains what gerrymandering is, the legalities of it, the illegalities of it? Have you seen any station really talk about the nuances of foreign policy, national policy, where we are? How did we get here? Have you seen at a White House press conference anybody pressing Carolyn Levitt, the press secretary, or any of President Trump's cronies up there? No, they're not doing it because they're scared for their jobs. So they're more interested in having access than giving the truth. So therefore, you have people like me who stood up for it and had to pay for it and had been silenced for a long time. But there are ways of getting that information out. The sad part about it is right now, Americans are not getting a steady diet of the truth from any place. And that's the sad thing about it. And so for there are a lot of people that are very, very much confused, and they think that they know the truth, but they really don't know almost anything of what they're talking about. And how do we get beyond that? We have to find more people that are willing to stand up and talk about the issues and try to explain what these issues are. It starts at the grassroots level. It starts at people like the folks that are on this panel that are listening to try to see if they can find out, to ask the questions why, and also to challenge their beliefs. Let me just end by just saying this. Most people want to listen to what they already want to believe. You don't deserve to have a belief if you're not willing to test it. And most people are not willing to test what they believe. When I went to Fox News, I went in there as a very hard left liberal. And I came out still a liberal, but some of my beliefs changed because I had to test them. And most people are not willing to do that. So I got into conversations with some of the leading conservatives of this country. And I'm not talking about MAGA people. There's a difference between conservatives and MAGAs. Okay. A big difference. And we have great discussions. We don't have that now because a lot of people don't really want to hear anything other than what they already want to believe in. And there are more nuances to that I can get into, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you,
He
Drew.
just
Ed?
didn't say
Yeah,
anything. He didn't say shit.
I'm sorry.
Ed, would you chime in on
Yes.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, and I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Phillips, when you look at the hyperpolarization of media, you know, Cass Sunstein, a former University of Chicago, excuse me, law professor, talked about the term echo chambers, right? And the reason that we're seeing such polarization is because of algorithms on social media. So now, when you watch the Super Bowl, we could both be watching the Super Bowl and get different commercials based on the aggregated data that these various platforms have collected on us. And so if we tend to trend left, right, and we consider ourselves progressive, then we're probably going to, go on Instagram and Facebook and like Barack Obama, like their page, like Kamala Harris's page, like Joe Biden's page, and like other, Democratic candidates and politicians' pages. And so then we're gonna start to get inundated with, progressive. Our news feed is gonna come overwhelmingly progressive, and so that is why you're seeing the hyperpolarization of Americans today. A lot of it just really has to do with algorithms. But something that I really want to talk about is because I think Dr. Lyons, you had mentioned the kind of maybe the apathy you saw when you moved to Florida, and then
Yeah.
amongst young people. We have to all understand that all of us on this call, we're political elites, right? Man, we might not necessarily have all the money in the world, but we are the ones that care about what's going on. We study what's going on. We go to events. I mean, the mere fact that we're on this Zoom on a regular Thursday evening speaks to that. And so we have to understand that, our frame of mind and the way that we think about the world is not necessarily the way that other voters do. So, in political circles, we hear terms like packing and cracking, but if we speak to our neighbors in pure legalese, we lose their attention before we can even ask for their action. So, we have to translate this blueprint into everyday reality. Um, and then, why is this important? I mean, it's important because cracking and packing is taking a strong historic load bearing wall. So if you look at the connected communities of interest like South St. Petersburg, Newtown in Sarasota, and East Bradenton, and the fact that they're shattering it, what they're doing is, I mean, it's all calculated. It's all calculated. And so we need to ensure that we market a message that is uncompromising, but market a message that could also resonate with all different types of people. So, we have to talk about I mean, we have to look at taking social media and turning it into digital precincts. So, pillar one is to stop the thumb. So, people scroll fast. We cannot post dry text heavy PDFs. We need highly visual, high contrast graphics that show the sheer absurdity of the CD16 map. And that was that map I was just talking about. When people see a district that looks like a gerrymandered dragon stretching across Tampa Bay just to bypass black voters, they get angry, and anger is an engine for action. Pillar two is hyper local storytelling. We have to use short form video, reels, TikToks, and YouTube shorts. We want real people, local business owners, pastors, students, mothers, standing in East Bradenton, standing in South St. Pete, talking directly into their smartphones. They will say that the politicians tried to put me in a district with people 2 counties away who don't share my local needs, but they underestimated me. I'm still showing up. And then pillar three is the map check challenge. We need to make it incredibly easy for voters to see how they've been impacted. We want to roll out simple interactive digital tools where a voter can type in their address, see exactly how their representation changed, and immediately share a graphic to Facebook or Instagram that says, they redrew my district to dilute my voice, but I'm registered and I'm voting anyway. Check your map here. You know, there isn't a one size fits all, but I mean, we certainly need to meet voters where they are. And, it's not just young people. I mean, studies have shown that Facebook, has a high concentration of people 50 and older as users. So it's just important that we use new media and digital media to fight this good fight. And most importantly, and this is no disrespect to the attorney on here, but we can't speak in legalese.
When
Thank
I
you
was
so much. Go ahead.
a cub reporter at NBC in New York, the one thing that our news director said, it was the KISS uh, principle: keep it simple, stupid.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So here's the deal. I mean, and Ed, what you're saying is true. To reaching, because of the advent of social media, there's so many ways that we need to reach people that we didn't have to anymore. But the messaging itself has to be simple. Republicans are very, very good at it. And they're very, very good at spreading a lot of dirty, nasty, degrading information. But they put it out there. They will tell a lie and keep building on the lie, especially our president. And after a while, people begin to believe it. If you really want to get some good messaging out there, it's very simple. Anybody ever look at Jimmy Kimmel at night and see what he does every single night? He'll take several examples of what has happened during the day and just pound away at it and talk about how either silly it is or how much of a lie it is, whatever. All you have to do, and I've done this many, many times, I don't know why the Democrats don't do it. Trump will come out with a lie, and Jimmy Kimmel will put a string of lies together It takes no money to do this, and just put it out there. Do that. If you don't do anything else, just do that. But a lot of times people get a disillusion, especially our Democratic friends. Every time somebody turns around, I get someone from Hakeem Jeffries asking for money, 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 more money. Where's all this money going? It doesn't take a whole lot of money to put some video ads out there and put it out there and expose the lies. Keep it simple, stupid. Trump says something that's a lie, pound on him. Okay? Trump says something at a press conference, journalists confront him. Do that. That's how you deal with a bully. I know how to deal with bullies. Dr. Lyons knows what I'm talking about. That's what you have to do. It's not that difficult, but the Democrats have never, ever been good in a dogfight. Republicans or the MAGAs, they're good at it, but it's not that difficult. You get the areas where you want to get the message out there, but the message is stupid. The guy tells lies all the time. The Republicans tell lies all the time. Look at our economy. Oh, the economy is great. No, it's not. Okay. Oh, the war is over. No, it's not. So they keep on saying that. You keep coming back at them saying, no, you're wrong. You're lying. Nobody does that. You got to fight. When you're fighting with somebody like Trump and some of the MAGA people, you got to know how to deal with them. And the Democrats have not figured out how to deal with these clowns. And you got to deal with them a certain way. And the messaging that they want to get out there is very good. Biden had one of the best economies in the history of this country. He couldn't get the message out. Couldn't get it out. Why? And I can't figure it out. I don't know why. He had so many good things going there, but he could never get people. You're paying people all this money, and you can't get the message out. There's something wrong.
I think it's destroying the message as well. Let me give you a couple examples. I have two issues: abortion and immigration. It's not a crime to be here without papers. It's just not a crime. It's not a crime. You're not a criminal.
Exactly.
Allow people to label people illegal. Then everybody says these are criminals. Who the hell do we care about them? But it's not a crime. You're supposed to come and ask for political asylum. But none of the media, none of the Democratic leaders, nobody says that. We just call them illegal. That is
should be undocumented.
Exactly. It's immoral unbelief. And that is part of it. We don't know how to message. If you tell good folks, Christian folks, that they're not criminals, then maybe they won't treat them as criminals. But if you label them criminals, they are criminals in their mind. This is what they did to African Americans throughout history and to Latins, okay? Abortion. It's not about abortion. Nobody's in favor of abortion. But what we are in favor is a right of privacy. These right-wingers say, I'm about freedom. But we just gave the president and Congress the power to legislate privacy. It's not clearly enumerated in our Constitution, but not only Roe v. Wade, but the case Griswold before, that the government now can come into our personal life and dictate what they want to us. That's what we gave up, our fundamental right of privacy. And that's what we don't talk about. We talk, we got rid of abortion. You don't need to legislate abortion out. Just don't have them. Educate people. There's a million ways to do it. But don't take my right of privacy away. Equal with Voting Rights Act. When we're talking about this gerrymandering, nobody's explaining in real terms what they're trying to do. What they are doing is to prop up a 34-time convicted felon, draft dodger, rapist, 6-time bankrupt, and he's the leader of our country who can't. It's unconscionable that any person of faith could follow through with this guy. And if this is what you think our leader should be, then why don't our pastors and our churches be convicted felons and rapists and everything else? And, no, but nobody defines it. And that's what we need. We need young leaders or leaders that are going to speak to the people and educate them. I agree with Mr. Phillips and everyone else and Mr. James talking about the messaging and talking to people at their own level. Mr. James, I was taught plain English in law school. I had a professor that was very unique. They tried us say when you write something, write it so somebody can understand what the hell you're trying to say. But there are a lot of people that try to flower everything up and they don't communicate. And you know what's scary? I'm getting to the age that I don't relate. You know, I had a dad, I used to come over and he goes, son, how do I put on the VHS? And then he'd write it down. Then I come back and he goes, hey, I lost that paper. How do I put on the TV and the VHS? I feel like I'm getting there now. And, you know, I always been wondering at what point am I too old? At what
Mm.
point is Trump too old? At what point is Biden too old? I love Biden. I knew Biden. I hung out with Biden. I worked with Biden. He's a good man. I can't say anything negative that I saw, but he was not functioning well at the end, right? So when is it? My dad was he died at 101. God bless his soul. And he said, I remember he was like 99. He had to get to the polls. I said, Dad, why are you voting? Your views are from the greatest generation. It don't exist anymore. Let the young people decide. You're going to die any minute. What the hell are you doing? Now, that's terrible to say. But what I'm trying to say, because I think pilots at 65, they can't fly anymore commercially. Do we have a responsibility to give it to the young people at some point or not? No, you
Well, you
disagree
make
and say, no, I don't know. But it scares me that maybe I'm out of touch. Maybe it's their turn to take it and run. How many of us, Susie Copeland, has been in the battle in our community, 30, 40, I can't even remember. I don't even say how old she is either, but always there, always fighting the fight. Coach Shannon back in the day, you know. And then when does the young people need to take responsibility? I'm scared because I don't see a lot of young people caring, like you say. Mr. James is right. I don't know how I relate. Maybe I don't know how to relate to them. Maybe Mr. Phillips can understand. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe
there's one thing that you said. There's one thing that you said that rings true in terms of relinquishing power and also educating and bringing young people along. I can give you several examples, but one major example is why we are where we are right now is one person, and that is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She did not want to give up that seat. And President Barack Obama was trying to get her so that we would get somebody in there
right.
and keep the vestiges of power balanced or at least tipped to the Democrats.
You are
She
right.
dies. She dies in office. And this is what we have. Okay. Jim Clyburn. Love the man. He's 85 years old. I'm not saying that he should stop being an advocate or anything like that. But who are you grooming along? You know, who are you bringing along here from the younger generation to take your spot? You should be now passing that torch on to somebody else.
Somebody
There
that
you
understands
go.
AI, Mr. Phillips, don't you think? I mean, look, we have people in power who don't know how to write the laws to protect our people for the future. I think I could be wrong.
Well,
Uh,
as a millennial, I mean, I'm 36, and in some rooms I'm old, in many rooms I'm young, and
I'll
I can.
trade you any day, Ed.
You're
Any
young
day.
and
You're a
rosy
young
out
man.
there,
I don't care
Javier.
what you say, what you think. You're a young
But
man.
I do agree that, especially at the local level, a lot of the men and women who have fought the good fight have not sought out a young person to groom and get them ready. And a lot of times that's just people wanting to just hold on to power. I mean, that happens on the right and the left. And I mean, I gotta call it like I see it. There are some people who, you know, because of mentors, they were able to get in, and they're just not giving up power. I mean, how long do people in Congress stay in their seats? We see people who hold on to congressional seats for longer than I've been alive, and to me that's a problem, because I think democracy works best when there is a clear transition of power.
I
And so
founded
that's
an organization called Unidos Now in Sarasota. You may have heard of it. We put 4,500 young people to the top universities in the country. It's a Latino-based organization. The concept where I came up with it, I was going to all these churches and they were filled with Latinos praying for immigration reform, praying for this and that. And I go, oh my God, what a waste of time. If you're a person of faith, ask God for the strength for you to make the change. You may need God's help to empower you to get off your butt and do something. But he gives you a brain and hands and feet. Use them. And the word I love in Spanish for prayer, since there's so many people that hear that study that, is oración. Orar con acción. Prayer with action. So it's saying prayer alone is not going to do it. You got to act. So if I'm a pastor, if I'm a priest, if I'm a person of faith, I always tell people, ask God if that's what you believe in. Ask God for the strength for you to make the change, for you to get off your butt and happening. Those people are, if you're on the Titanic and it's sinking and you drop to your knees and pray, you're in heaven that night, but you're dying that night too. If you say, God, help me think I get out of this situation, you might live for another day. I don't know. That's my belief. So what we did, and Kelly Kirchner was my first executive director, and I think he's running for Congress now too. He's a great guy and former mayor of Sarasota. What we tried to do is empower young people. I don't have to tell them what to think. We have to teach them to think, and then they will figure it out. Because good people are going to go to the right spot, I think, So I think I agree with, Ed and Mr. Phillips 100% that, it's the messaging, empowering the young people and getting them to believe they have a place at the table, and that we keep pounding that and we keep rocking it. And hopefully we'll get there. And I'm just going to say this, as I was saying that we go forward, the Civil War, emancipation, blah, blah, blah. We go forward and then we step backwards, Jim Crow and everything else. Then we come back forward again, civil rights era, then we drop back down. Obama gets elected, we drop down. But we're heading in the right direction. I just wish I was alive to see the freedom train arrive, where we can forget color and we can forget we're men or women. We can be just all people together and judge us for our character. But
well, something, success is never linear. It ebbs and flows. And I think that Ed meant something. It was one word, and I think that we all really need to understand what this is all about when it comes to politics and democracy. Democracy is a system that's designed where people have to be involved, otherwise it doesn't work. And most people are not. I'll go around to meetings and stuff like that. I'll ask people, how many town halls or how many assembly meetings have you gone to? And like 2 people will raise their hands, but yet and still, if nothing gets done, everybody's up in arms. But democracy will never work unless people are willing to be involved in it. And a lot of people, I don't care on what side of the aisle you're on, are really not involved in democracy. Now, how do you make that work? I think through messaging, you have to get people to get together to understand, for instance, the importance of the vote. How many people died, faced hoses, or killed bombs in churches throughout this country because of the right to vote? It's very critical. But most politicians don't want you to understand it. No, they want you to be ignorant about the vote, okay? And the importance of it. So you have a lot of people out there, young or old, well, my vote doesn't count. Oh, yes, it does. And we can get into the nuances of the Electoral College and all that and why it probably should be abolished at this point. You got to get people out there to understand. So you want to put your money in places. I would say to our politicians, get some town halls together, go around to churches and stuff like that, and start educating people on the right to vote, how important they are as individuals. Okay? You count. Like Jesse Jackson said, I am somebody. You are. But you have politicians out there that want to hold up power that will let you think that you are not somebody, but you are.
So Mr. Phillips and Ed James, you need to have your own shows. I talk to young people all this time, and I'd say, we go to these forums. I remember I ran for office, and maybe I speak at an event, and the 200 people there love me, or maybe 1,000 people I touch, they love me, but 450,000 are going to vote. They don't know me. But today with technology, the people who have a voice, some of the people that haven't said a word here, might be the very people that need to be talking about these things in whatever, even podcast, YouTube, whatever. And it might hit or it might not. But I really believe we have to, just like putting this together, maybe if we all had to come to the same meeting, it would be hard to get even this many people. But look at the technology that allows us to be anywhere in the world and influence a person. And I think if the Black Caucus wants to, it's on the right road, how do you create something entertaining, clickbait and all that, but yet is empowering and gives a great message. And for every 100 that do it, only maybe one or 1,000. I don't know. Mr. Phillips would more where he's in the business, has that persona. But I think if we can do that, if we can touch our, how do I say, our tribe, if it's a Latino tribe, if you're Mexican, 76% of Latinos in this country are Mexican. I love to be Mexican. I'm not. But if we got to find those kids that will lead that tribe, and the Honduranian or Cuban or what have you, I think, then we have a better chance of making the changes. I think that's what the professor was talking about the kind of kids we're having, and we have to have a way to communicate really cool beliefs and make them feel part of it. And I'm sorry, I talked too
I
much.
want
No,
to I
thank you,
want
Brother
to I
Jordan.
want to talk a little bit about next steps, and then I need to get everyone involved if they have questions. I don't want to go too much further without people having the opportunity to ask you all questions. Recently, the NAACP launched what is called Out of Bounds campaign, and basically directly it encouraged Black college athletes and recruits to boycott public universities in southern states that have weakened Black voting power. The movement urges top athletes to withhold commitments, consider the transfer portal, and weigh historically Black colleges and universities as alternatives. This is one organization with one strategy that they are implementing. What are some other strategies moving forward that we could do to counter what's going on?
I'll hop in real quick. I'm a big fan of that campaign, and I've been saying this for a very long time that there should have been more athletes standing with Colin Kaepernick, more NFL football players standing with or kneeling really with Colin Kaepernick. You know,
Yes.
we have to understand where we have leverage, right? And the National Football League, African Americans have the kind of leverage that doesn't really exist in everyday life. And I don't understand for the life of me why they didn't boycott playing on Sundays, because I can tell you the NFL cannot exist without African Americans. Period, point blank. They can't play one game. There's not even one NFL team that can play a game without African Americans. But it requires you to think with a communal mindset. It requires you to think with a communal mindset and have the understanding that you do have leverage in that situation. And I think far too often, especially with young Black folks, we don't think that we have leverage. We don't realize that we have a defeatist mindset. So even when we're multimillionaires, we're afraid to take a stand because we think that somehow it's going to take food out of our mouth, knowing good and darn well, hey man, the football NFL does not exist. There's no Sunday football without Black people. Period,
To,
point
to,
blank.
to your point, Ed, you're absolutely 100% correct. However, having spoken with some of those very athletes, um, to distinguish them from those who paved the way in the past, the Muhammad Ali's, the Jim Browns, and those that made statements and stood and knew what was at stake and what they were willing to sacrifice. We have a generation of athletes that prioritize the bag. I'm not mad at them for that, but many of them felt like they could not afford to take that chance. And this is
Yes.
how they responded to it. And so it speaks to prioritizing yourself or recognizing that there is a movement afoot that is bigger than you and has implications that are much larger than just you and your family, which is what Colin Kaepernick clearly understood and was willing to make the sacrifice that he made. And it was a sacrifice. As you can see, he never played another down of professional
It's
football.
societal problem. If you have a black business and you don't patronize that black business, and you go to Walmart and said you're doing injustice. A Korean goes to a Korean store, a Jew goes to a Jew. I mean, it's not cool that that has to happen, but in the Latino community, those guys that were killed in Minnesota, those good white progressives were killed by Latino cops.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about? How do we have a black justice who is putting the knife in the back of fellow people? I don't.
It's an allegiance to a system that has no allegiance to you and yours.
I'm trying to figure that out. Why is
Yeah.
it? Why is it that we walk past a store that could use our dollar and go to a store that doesn't give a darn about us? Why do we go shop at a store that's giving money if you're against Trump to Trump? You can vote with your dollar. You can vote with the power you have. But we have to look in the mirror and say, why don't we? The professor knows. I don't know. Maybe professor. I'm sorry. It's talking so much. You're so knowledgeable. I would love to hear more from you.
Well, yeah, I'll hop in on just one thought in response to the Reverend on steps going forward in the context of the massive gerrymandering that we're seeing at the moment. The cracking of majority minority districts or just Democratic leaning districts, watering them down to try to make them more competitive for flips to the Republican column. They have to put those voters somewhere. And what they're doing is that they are moving them into what used to be safer Republican districts. But there's a risk to that. And so even in our own CD16, as ugly as this gerrymander looks, this is actually probably the best opportunity for a Democrat to win. It's still going to be leaning Republican, but it's not so safe as it was. And so what they're doing, there is a possibility it could backfire in places. If you have a major wave election cycle, then some of these racial and partisan gerrymanders could end up biting them in the butt. It gets back to get people out to vote, but just because you're being shifted in a way that's rather sinister, it means that you should definitely come out, engage, do everything that you can. It actually, you might be able to burn them. And so I think that's a message, is not to be demoralized by the wave of gerrymandering that you're going to see. Understand that there is some risk that the gerrymanders are taking when they're doing this. Let's make them pay for it.
I think you're so right, Matt. There's a silver lining there in what you're saying, but I think the other thing that people don't understand when it comes to gerrymandering is where the money goes. So, say for instance, the Republicans now have control of a district; they can put a lot of money in there, and that goes to messaging. Where do you go to vote? Where do you not go to vote? And you can take the power of that gerrymandering and the money that can be controlled by a particular party to keep messaging away from people that will still serve to disenfranchise them. That's my only thing. But my question to you would be also this: how much of this will be challenged by the courts? What's going on now with gerrymandering? Is there any leverage by the courts that might change some of this?
At the federal level or the state? Let me actually answer that rather quick. What was so devastating about this recent Calais and Louisiana decision? It builds upon actually a 2019 decision that Rucho versus Common Cause. But in that decision, the Supreme Court essentially said that the federal government has no business in trying to restrict partisan gerrymandering. And so all restrictions are off. It's not that you have to do it, but that federal government's going to stay out of it. And then in the Calais decision that we just had, Alito penned the majority opinion that if you're going to find something in violation of the Voting Rights Act, it has to be racial. Just because it's partisan gerrymandering, that's fine, which makes it almost impossible to differentiate between the two. However, I'm watching what's happening closely here in the state because the Calais decision actually, again, reinforces the autonomy of states. If they want to restrict partisan gerrymandering, they can go ahead and do that. And we did in the 2010 Fair District Amendments. It's very clear within our Constitution, you cannot draw lines with the purpose of favoring or disfavoring a political party. They just did that, and they were public about it. It's rather clear. I'm wondering how the heck you're going to have a state Supreme Court bless this. Yesterday, the decision came out. An initial decision was it ruled against an order to freeze this. And the justification was that it's too close to the election, which is kind of BS. But I still think I have a hard time even stretching my mind in sinister ways how you're going to get around the state prohibition on partisan gerrymandering.
He's ignoring it. They just ignore it. You can have a great constitution, and there are many countries that have amazing constitutions. But if you have the DOJ that doesn't want to follow it, the courts that don't want to follow it, it's worthless. It's just a piece.
Yeah. So the federal government is not going to do anything, but our state Supreme Court,
well, including the state, they're partisan right wingers in our state court.
I want to make sure that
I'm wondering what the justification would be, other than I'm ignoring the state constitution. I don't know how you can come up with. They came up with it's too close to the election this time.
Well, that's because they want to protect Trump now.
Sure, no question about that.
And
absolutely.
so, if
gentlemen, we do have a question in the chat that I want to get to. I just don't want to leave out our audience who's with us. The question in the chat is, how do we get young people to understand the struggle that took place in order to get the right to vote? I ask because I believe they are too far removed from that struggle to value the right to vote. And that's from Dwayne Josie.
One of the things that Pastor Lyons said that was interesting was with those athletes, he said they just valued the bag too much, or so much rather. And for those who don't understand, the bag is, we're talking about just money, right? Wealth. And, when I think about the civil rights movement, you can't talk about the civil rights movement without talking about boycotts. And see, when you think about the Montgomery bus boycott, it wasn't, it had nothing to do with people changing their viewpoint on African Americans or discrimination or racism. It had everything to do with their purse. And that's what it was about at the end of the day. And until African Americans, young African Americans, realize that we have legitimate power in our consumerism, then I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, and of course, I can't speak for everyone, but I do know, being a fairly young a person of color, that yeah, my generation we value the bag, and a lot of it is because of social media, is because of us juxtaposing our lives to other people's lives, and a lot of it isn't necessarily the truth. But the fact of the matter is that we spend way too much time trying to get people to get a change of heart, and I think that's what folks on the left often do. You try so hard to get people to change their heart. Forget about it. We don't have that type of power. Only one person has that power, and that's God. I think what we can do is work to, use our economic power, right, to get things accomplished. And it's worked in the past, and I think it can work again in 2026. We just have to all be bought in.
You know something, I don't know if a lot of people would agree with this, but I believe this wholeheartedly. I remember one of my old pastors said years ago, every rose has a thorn, and there's the sword is a double-edged sword. My parents grew up in an era where they experienced Jim Crow. I didn't necessarily experience that aspect of it, so my life was a lot better. My sister has kids. They don't look at race and stuff the same way I did or my parents did. At Purdue University, we had a Black Cultural Center there in the 70s. And everybody who was Black, for the most part, congregated there. You walk down the street, yo, bro, yo, sister. When I went back to Purdue to lecture about 10 to 15 years ago, the Black Cultural Center was largely inhabited by white and Asian students. Black folks, the young Black kids, don't have the same, their backs aren't against, a lot of them, not everybody, but a lot of the folks who have money and means and parents, a lot of us are middle class and stuff like that, whatever, their backs are not up against the wall like our folks were. Okay? Back there when you're talking about the Montgomery bus boycott, you are absolutely right, Ed. It was a money situation. Okay? That's what broke it. But you had Black people that stuck together for over 365 days or more to make sure that reality happened. I think nowadays, things are better for a lot of kids that are of color, although they may not see it that way, that we may see it, but they don't have that same, they don't have the same struggles that we have. So things are different now.
Well,
And that makes it, you know what I'm saying? I don't know
yeah.
if you would agree,
I
but
agree with you, and you answered the question in your statement, which is you said they stuck together 365 days out of the year. That's because they were living in segregation.
yeah.
And my father, God bless the dead, I was born to older parents. So my father actually integrated the Sarasota County Library system. My dad was 50 when I was born. So my perspective was very different from a lot of the other people my age. But I do know this. My dad always said integration was the worst thing to ever happen to Black folks. And
Okay.
if you talk to older Black folks, maybe 80 and up, you'll hear that a lot. You will hear that because they remember the times when they had to stick together because that's how the communities were. There was Black pharmacies and all types of Black businesses because they patronized Black businesses. I mean, that was just the norm. So, we are operating in a different time today. And by no means am I recommending segregation. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying, though, is that you said specifically, and it really stuck with me, you said they were with each other 365 days of the year, all the time. And there was a kind of united struggle there that is just not seen. And I just, again, maybe going back to the bag, right? But, I get the thing that was just so perplexing to me is again, the NBA, they understand it a little bit better because the NBA players seem to wield a little bit more influence than the NFL players. But I just, they're not gonna cut all of you. There's no way. They can't cut all of you. They can't release all, what they do. Going to release all the Black players in the NFL? It's not possible. And white folks don't even want to watch a football with just white people playing. So, I mean, I'm being honest.
How much
Ed,
of this is racism and how much is it just power? If African American districts were Republican, this be different, this conversation? I mean, would they not do, are these people more about power or is it just racism? I'm asking. You're the learned part.
I think power supersedes
Our
everything.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
it is bigotry at its core, and that bigotry can be manifested in racism. It can be manifested in ageism. It can be manifested around gender. It can be manifested around classism. But it's bigotry at its core. The frequency and the easiness toward being prejudiced toward a sense of other, however that other is defined, is just rampant in this nation. It just is. We are polarized. And when you say power, power does everything in its power to maintain power.
Yeah,
Every
but Dr. Lyons, let me take it one step further. And it's not just here. If you look at the human condition, there's an old phrase I used to say behind the anchor desk at Arise News. If it's not about the money, it's about the money. This country was built on the blacks of black people, but it all dealt with economics. And how do you keep people down? You use racism as a tool to keep and maintain power. You go back to the 30s and the 20s in Germany when Hitler was there. His tool and scapegoat were the Jews. And he did everything in his power at the time to keep power by using the Jews as a scapegoat. You got the same thing that's going on over there in the Middle East with the Gaza Strip, but you have it here in this country at the beginning of time. We would not be where we are right now if it wasn't for the economic malfeasance that was perpetrated against people of color because of power, and they use race as a tool. Race has always been the tool. Okay, I mean, if you look at it, I think people fundamentally, most people understand that, look, you may not be any better than me, but if you convince somebody that you are, you got their pockets. What did LBJ say? If you can take the poorest white man and convince him that he is stronger and more and superior than the richest white man, you can pick his pockets every day and maintain power. Everything that's going on right now with gerrymandering and stuff like that is for a certain party to maintain power. Trump himself says he doesn't care about the people. He cares about maintaining power. And that's what this is all about. And race, bigotry, misogyny, and all those things are tools to keep power. Why do you think there's so many people in Congress that are millionaires? They want to maintain their power. They control the laws. Okay, if you control the laws, I can keep the power. That's what this is all about. And so the racism, misogyny, and all those are tools for people who want to maintain power. And that's what this is all about.
When we lose the sense of importance to supporting one another, we end up where we are now. Integration certainly became the catalyst for the decimation of Black business districts all throughout this nation. We stopped supporting our own because we had the right then to spend our money everywhere else. And we lost the sense of urgency and placing an importance of supporting Black businesses. And we're paying for that now.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from our guests for our panelists? You're a quiet bunch.
There was one from Kiara Cosby just before Mr. Joseph's question, Pastor Lyons.
Okay, the litigants in the Louisiana versus Calais decision claimed that a second district being drawn for Black Americans disenfranchised them as non-African Americans, therefore a 14A violation. How do we prevent laws that were written for us from being used against us as Black voters? Yeah. Professor Frank, you want to touch that?
I'm not afraid of touching. I just don't have a clear answer to that just yet. It especially stings to have the Supreme Court interpret laws that were designed to protect the constitutional rights of minorities necessarily. One little factoid, just for anybody that's remaining, there were 4 members of Congress that were recognized as minority, ethnic or racial or ethnic minorities at the time of the Voting Rights Act. There's 139 right now. And so the Voting Rights Act did its job, and it did it well. Having that language interpreted in a way that drawing a district or creating a new majority-minority district violated the rights of white people because it discriminated against them is, I feel like, an Alice in Wonderland. It's a panned decision. Maybe at some point it'll be reversed by a future Supreme Court. I just don't think that you never give up. And so, you can take a hit, but we can still show up, vote, push back, try to regain power. And I would also caution against further degrading our democratic systems in order to regain power. I mean, we have to do it the right way, and reinforce those systems, even if there's some temporary setbacks. And so, again, I know it stings, but I wouldn't put it past it happening again, taking laws that were designed to protect minorities in the Black community, turning them on their head and distorting them in a way that used to, to punish and oppress.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
unfortunately, this emerges as a blueprint for just that. Seeing how it was carried out,
Yeah.
and that is
And
unfortunate.
Dr. Lyons, and that's why it's so important what you're just saying there. And I think that's why some even Republicans were really against what Trump was trying to do, like in the state of Indiana, because they said, look, this could backfire on us, and Frank said the same thing. So it's a double-edged sword. But, I think, if I could just say this, and I will keep my mouth shut, I just want to praise God for the folks who put this together. We've had maybe as many as 21 people on this. But we should have hundreds, if not thousands, of people doing this kind of thing. We need to get somehow town halls or whatever to get our folks out preaching from the pulpits and making people understand some fundamentally simple things. If they don't know, all the mechanics of gerrymandering and all those kinds of things, the fundamental thing that I think people should know, especially Black Americans, is that they are important. You are important. Your vote counts. And let me tell you why it counts. And let me tell you why it's important that you should be involved in this democratic system. We need people out there like you, Dr. Lyons, the rest of the folks out here to get out there and say, this is why it matters. And you matter, because I think a lot of people out there don't really think a whole lot of themselves. And I think if you get them to understand who they are and what they are and why they matter and why they count, I think that'll change things. And you'll get a lot more people, to get up and get involved.
But maybe the problem also, and it's not a problem, you're a blessing, you try to do your things the right way. But I find progressives or people who lean a little left tend to be fair, tend to be cutthroat. They don't tend to be evil. When you go up against an SO what they're going to do whatever it takes to take your ass out. And this other side, as you heard the professor, well, I don't want to dig in, and he's correct. You got to do it the right way. But if you do it the right way, be ready to lose. Because these guys are evil.
Right.
Trump,
You're right.
you're going to tell me Trump's a Christian? You're going to think that Trump wants fairness? You think he cares about anything but himself?
No.
So now you're going good against evil. Who's going to have the better advantage if they're going to be willing to do whatever it takes to win?
Agreed.
And you can be cunning like a fox.
Well, I don't want to ignore the question that's in the chat, because I have a response to that. But what do you say to the person that's tired of everything that's going on and wants to disconnect? My first response to that question is, that's why we've been bombarded with so much madness, to create this type of fatigue where people just give up, where they figure, well, what's the use now? Everything's just going to hell. Why even bother? That is part of the plan to get people to that point. It's been one thing after another, after another, after another, after another, to just create that very type of fatigue. So we have to be aware of that and say, I'm going to be undaunted by the massive amount of madness that's going on, and I'm going to be just as committed to defeating this evil.
Coach Eddie Shannon. Eddie Shannon. If you know Coach Shannon, to keep it going. I don't know if you remember his thing. He'd always talk to people. Just keep it going. No matter, and that's what you have to do. You get your every morning and you go to work at whatever you got to do. And then the right things come, you'll make the changes. We'll listen to the professor and we'll listen to Mr. Phillips and Mr. James, and we'll do the right thing. And hopefully the right thing comes, for all of us. I think we're moving in the right direction. if we look at the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
I think my solution is all of us have sex and have children with other racial people, and we'll make one. That's what I think.
um, Dr. Lyons,
Sorry, I'm sorry
if
about
I
that. Sorry.
no, you're good, man. If I may, I think it's important that we validate the fatigue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes when you have one generation talking to another generation, it sometimes leads to degradation. And so I think one, you need to acknowledge that feeling tired is completely valid. It's a deeply human response to we're in a heavy political climate, right? But frame disconnecting not as a failure, but as a necessary pit stop. And I'm saying pit stop. It's entirely okay to step back from the national news cycle and toxic social media feeds to protect your own mental health. However, while a single vote might feel swallowed up in a massive national machine, its impact is magnified at the local level. And that is why we need to continue to really emphasize these local elections. In Sarasota County, we have 3 seats that are up for reelection, and one of those candidates that's running is an African American man named Jimmy Glover. If Jimmy Glover happens to win, it'll be the first time in the history of Sarasota County that we've had an African American on the Sarasota County School Board, right? So it's those types of wins that, and I'm a writer and reporter, so I'm not endorsing Jimmy Glover, but I am saying it's that those kinds of wins, if you frame it that way, could potentially get people excited, right? Because at the end of the day, the likelihood of you being able to talk to President Trump is slim to none. But you can get a hold of your city commissioner. You can get a hold of your county commissioner. You can get a hold of your school board member. And all the same crap that's going on at the federal level is going on at the local level as well. So again, I think one is to validate their fatigue, right? My mom and I have different opinions on this. My mom, who is a beautiful 76-year-old black woman, which she will go off on any young person that says that they don't believe in voting, and I tell her, that just makes people not want to vote even more. You have to understand that there is a reason as to why they feel that way. So validate that and let them know that it is okay to feel that way. However, you know, you have three little black and brown kids that are in Sarasota County schools or Antioch County schools. By the way, there's a school board election that directly impacts your babies. That pothole on your street, that directly is impacted by the city commission. You know what I mean? You always say that garbage is never picked up on time. That's your county commission. So
Yep.
we need to really make it hyper local. And I think if we can kind of redirect, because most people, when they think about elections, anyways, they just think about the president. Very few people understand congressional districts, state house seats, state senate seats, and all that. So we got to make it local. Got to make it local.
You know something, if you were a minister, I'd say that's someone passed the plate and I don't want to hear no noise. I mean, that was good. But what you're saying is so true. And I didn't want to mention this, but we have been there before in the state and we can be there again. Case in point, my cousin, Jonathan Clarkson Gibbs, was the first Black Secretary of State of the state of Florida. A lot of people don't know that we had a Black Secretary of State of the state of Florida. So yeah, it is local, and we can do things here. But again, it takes people like you, Ed, who know a lot about what's going on down here. I'm new to the state, to make sure that these things kind of happen, and of course our leaders, like Dr. Lyons, Suzanne, and others like that, to make sure that people understand and know what's going on about this vote, this Glover person. It is local. You're absolutely right.
Susie, I'm going to turn things back over to you. I want to thank all of our panelists for their rich contribution to this subject matter. And I know that Susie is going to be in touch with you all as we continue to consider our next steps and we continue to galvanize the people and continue to have these forums, which are informative and strategy building, which we need a lot more of. So again, I thank you, Susie, and the Manatee County Democratic Black Caucus for hosting such a thing, and for each of our excellent panelists for their wonderful contributions. Thank you so much, so much, so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. God bless you all. Susie, it's all yours.
Thank you all so very much. I enjoyed this conversation. I think we need to have more of these conversations. And I believe that we've got to speak truth to power. We cannot sugarcoat what's going on in our communities, in our state, and in our country. We have to have open, honest conversations. And Mr. Phillips, please don't retire yet. The voice still needs to be heard. Our
Oh
people are
Lord, don't
suffering.
don't don't
Manatee.
tell Dr. Lyons that. Lord have mercy.
Well,
Nope.
listen, I'm saying it to all of you guys. Professor Alcott, thank you so much for coming. CJ, appreciate you so much. And listen, until the Lord says it's enough, Susie, I'm going to be out there on the front line until the good Lord says
Amen.
enough is
Good.
enough.
Yes,
I'm not
ma'am.
ready to give
Excellent.
up. And
Excellent.
it's not for me, it's for the generations that are coming after me. We've
Susie,
got to
I'll
make
follow
it
you
better
to,
for
I'll
Thank you,
follow
them.
you
Susie.
around the world. You lead the charge.
Absolutely.
We'll be there.
Absolutely. So thank you, gentlemen, so very much. You just don't know how my heart is just full with the wonderful message that you communicated with us. And I have to agree with CJ. Pastor Lyons, Ed, CJ, Frank, Julian, you guys need to have a podcast. We need to have more conversations like this.
I
We
do
are
have a
bombarded.
podcast out. I put it on the group chat,
I
shameless
saw it,
plug.
Ed. I saw
It's
Well,
it. Yeah.
notes from the
you bring
field.
these men in. You bring these women who are out there on the front lines doing great things in our community. People need to hear the message.
They do.
And so I am so thankful for you guys being here. Thanks for all of the participants that joined us. And it should have been more. We push it. People got to have a desire to want to hear the truth.
Mhm.
And CJ, you did say it's got to come from that pulpit. Thank you, Dr. Lyons, for pushing it out there. We've
Yeah, you're
got to.
welcome.
Yes, we have souls to save, but baby, we're
Amen.
living day to day in these communities that need to be improved. And we've got to
Listen,
communicate that message.
it was
Susie.
Saint Augustine who said that we should always pray as if everything is totally dependent upon God, but we should also work as if everything is dependent upon us, which is a
Amen.
reflection of faith without works.
Can I
Is
say
Amen.
something? Last thing. I can only say this to every black church I've been to. I always feel like I'm in the presence of God. I can't say that for other churches, and I'll leave it at that. I can't tell you why. I just feel a great community always, and I can understand why people would want to have faith with that kind of support and love and feeling you get when you're in a church like that. Thank you.
Amen.
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 God bless
Thank
you
you
all.
all.
Have a
Yeah.
wonderful
Thank you
night,
so very
everyone.
much.
Take care.
All right, we will continue the business of the